Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Biznology Digital Marketing Webinar. My name is Frank Reed, and I'm one of the bloggers here at Biznology. I'm also the managing editor for Marketing Pilgrim blog, and we're currently number 12 on the Ad Age Power 150. I also consult with small and medium businesses regarding effective online marketing through my business, which is called Local Basics. But today you'll be hearing from Mike Moran, founder of the Biznology blog, who will present Optimize Your Website Search. So as we wait for more attendees to join, let me just review the format of the webinar for you. Our Biznology webinars last just about 30 minutes, so you can easily fit them into your busy schedule. We record each webinar, and we'll email you that link later on this week. During our speaker's presentation, you can use your GoToWebinar controls to ask a question. That orange arrow opens and closes your webinar controls. And if you have a question, all you need to do is simply type it into the box labeled questions at any time during the event, and then press the send button. And that'll come to me, and I'll select a few of the questions at the end of the webinar and pose them to Mike. So while we're waiting for the few last attendees to come and join us, I'd like to remind you that the Biznology newsletter and blog are available for free at Biznology, that's biznology.com. So if you're not already a subscriber, we hope that you'll sign up now. So thanks again, all of you, for spending the next 30 minutes with us. We realize how valuable your time is, so let's introduce today's speaker. Mike Moran is the founder of the Biznology blog, a well-known expert in all things digital marketing, and he's the chief strategist at Conversion, which is a leading social consultancy. Mike is the co-author of Search Engine Marketing, Inc., and the sole author of Do It Wrong Quickly. Mike is a veteran of IBM, managing groups in IBM.com for 8 years, and he retired from IBM in 2008 as a distinguished engineer. So if you've ever struggled with how to optimize your website search, this is the webinar for you. So Mike, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Frank. So we've done lots of webinars here at Biznology on search engine marketing and other kinds of marketing, and this one's a little bit different because this is about your site search. So it's not about Google, it's not about how you get people to come to your site, it's how you use your site search engine, how your visitors use it after they get to your site. And if you're like most websites, what your users would tell you, if you could ask them, is that your site search engine stinks. Most site search engines aren't very good. And people are disappointed because they feel like they always find what they're looking for on Google, and then when they come to your website and they search, they don't find what they're looking for. But the thing we want to focus on is not what your customers say, because they'll say the search engine stinks, but the truth is that you don't care about having a good search engine versus a bad search engine. Your goal isn't even to say you have good search results. What you're really looking for is business value. What you're looking for, if you have an internet site, is to sell things. You're looking to do business. So search is always a means to an end. So whether it's an internet site or an intranet site where you're doing something inside your company, you have business goals for it. It might be to save time, to cut costs. Most of the time for an internet site, for your external website, you're trying to sell things, whether it's online or offline. And so that's where the focus has to be. The focus doesn't have to be on the search results, and certainly not on the search engine technology. It needs to be on what that search engine technology and what those search results do for your business, how they help your customers to find what they're looking for and then buy it. So why is website search so frequently disappointing? Well, one of the reasons is that Google works really well. And so if you think about what the problems are, the reason Google works so well, in part, is because they have fantastic technology and thousands of engineers and put loads of money into it. But the other reason that Google works so well is that web search, what Google does, is actually an easier problem than website search. And the reason is because with web search, you're looking at all sorts of answers all around the world, lots of companies. But with website search, all you can look at is your own site. So that might seem to make the problem easier, but as we'll see, it actually makes the problem harder. The other reason that people are disappointed is a lot of times they resort to website search after they've already tried navigating. So they've come to your site, they've already scanned the menus, they've already tried to figure out where to click, and they couldn't figure anything out. So they start out frustrated. And then after that, they have to figure out how to use the search engine. And so both of those things make it difficult. Search is something that is more difficult for people to do than just clicking on a link. Lots of people don't like to type. Some of us are touch typists, many of us are not. And so just the act of typing is a little harder than just clicking on a link. They're not typing something that they necessarily know how to do. They have to figure out what the right words are. And as we'll see, it's much harder to figure out the right words when you're searching a single site than when you're searching the entire web. The other thing that makes it hard is that searchers are not terribly persistent. A great study by Jared Spool at User Interface Engineering showed that searchers try one search, maybe two searches, and after that they give up. They don't like to dig around for things. When you show a result page, they don't like to click on one result, come back, click on another, come back. And even though they're disappointed, even though it's not working, they hardly ever tell you what's wrong. And so that makes all of these things make search a more difficult thing to do than what people usually do when they're working on the web. And as we said, they often search after they failed trying to navigate. So when people come to a web page, whether it's the home page of your site or whether they've landed on an interior page of your site, perhaps from searching on Google, the first thing they do is they look at the page to see if they're in the right place. And if they're not in the right place, then they start out trying to figure out where to go from here. And if they can figure that out and click on the right navigation link and get where they're going, they're very happy. When they can't find where they're supposed to go, that's usually when they resort to searching. And so automatically, the kinds of things they're looking for in search are more difficult to find than what's at your top level of navigation. And so, in fact, they might be looking for something that doesn't even exist on your site. And so search gets blamed for other things. It gets blamed for not being able to find hard-to-find information. It gets blamed for the fact that you don't even have the content on your site to answer a particular question. And so those kinds of problems get blamed on search when they're actually bigger problems with your site. Perhaps your navigation needs to be fixed. Perhaps you need to add more content. But search gets blamed for those things. Now, that's not very important. It's not important for us to say, oh, search is getting a bad rap. Search is actually okay. The real thing that's going on here is your visitor is being disappointed. Your prospective customer is being disappointed. And whether they blame search or whether they blame the right cause doesn't matter. We have to figure out how to fix it. So instead of focusing on the search technology only, which is what a lot of people do, we need to focus on other things like the content on the site, like the navigation on the site to make sure that people find what they're looking for. The other thing that makes it even worse is that even though searching is harder for most people, searchers think they're good at it. They think they're good at it because they've been able to type characters into Google and find what they're looking for. So they think that they're very competent at this. And they also think that if they use site search with Google, then that works as well. And so I don't know how many of you use a Google toolbar. If you see on the screen where it says search site, sometimes that'll work too, even when the site search on your own site doesn't work. And so those are things that we need to think about. Why is that happening? So we talked earlier about how solving the problem of searching within a single website is actually a more difficult problem than searching the entire web. And we need to figure out why that is. If you understand that, it'll help you a lot. One of the reasons that's true is because on the internet, there's kind of a marketplace of content where you can think of dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands, and tens of thousands of websites are all competing to have the best answer for a particular question. So think about how many people are trying to answer some popular questions out there. And so as long as some of them have done a really good job of answering the question, Google has the opportunity to take those sites, put them at the top of the list, and people find them. But inside your organization, inside your company, there's only one group that's allowed to answer each question. So if somebody's searching for a certain product and the group that maintains that part of the website for that product has done a lousy job, then people aren't going to find that. And it might have nothing to do with the search engine. And so, but the thing that makes this hard is that the search technology is pretty much the same, whether it's website search or whether it's complete web search. And the reason that that web search seems to work so much better is because there's way more content to choose from. There's so many people creating good content out there that even if lots and lots of people are creating crappy content, enough people are creating good content that questions get answered. Inside an organization, there is no content marketplace. There's only one group that can create any particular piece of content, and if they do a lousy job, which many of them do, then you can't find what you're looking for. The other thing that's going on here is that, and this helps Google even when it does site search, is that there's another kind of content marketplace that's going on as well, which is that websites are linking to other websites. Social media sites are highlighting different kinds of websites. You can look at traffic to websites, and all of those things tell you something. They tell you if a page or a website is of high quality. And the high quality pages are much more likely to answer people's questions. But within your website, you don't have any of these clues. You don't know what all the links are from outside your site to yours. You don't know what all that social media activity is. And you can't tell whether your pages are getting more traffic on that subject than other pages on other sites. You don't know any of those things. And so when you use Google site search in their toolbar, you're taking advantage of all of those things. But if you use the Google search appliance, which is a search engine that has lots of the same Google search technology, and you just install it on your website and you use that, you don't have any of these clues. So even the exact same Google technology doesn't work as well when it's merely applied to site search. So then the question you might ask is, so why are we even bother? Right? Why don't we just let Google do this? Let people use their toolbars, take site search away. It's just wasting money on us anyway. But there are a few reasons why you might not want to let Google do it. One of them is that if searchers are searching the whole web instead of just your site, they might be finding your competitors. So why have them come to your site and then have them find your competitors? For the same reason, when Google puts up a search results page, it's going to put paid search results up there, and your competitors could be on that page as well. And the last reason is the one we just talked about, is that if you use something like Google Search Appliance, their search results might not be any better because they've also failed to get some of these clues. And so the reason that you want to focus on this stuff is because just like everything else on your site, you want to control the experience so that you can have your branding involved, but you also want to make sure that your searchers are getting a good experience. And if all you do is say, let's throw it over the wall and let somebody else do it, you're not necessarily going to have that happen. So how can you look at your site search and find out what's wrong with it? So if you've listened to me before, you know that I'm a bug about metrics. I'd always like you to focus on metrics and make your improvements based on what that feedback loop is telling you. And so we want to think about the different kinds of metrics that you can use. So you can use revenue metrics, you can use usage metrics, survey metrics, and result metrics. And I want to talk about each one of those and how you use them to improve your site search. So revenue and usage metrics can show that search is important. So this can be something you really need inside your organization, because you might find that there's no one in the organization that even thinks you should spend any time or money improving your site search. And so the first thing you have to do is to show that lots of people are using search. You also want to show how many of those people are actually buying things. And if you've gone to other webinars we've had, we've shown you how you can identify how sales are occurring online and offline. And so you can go back to the Biznology site and take a look at some of those old webinars if you don't know how to measure those things. You want to also calculate your conversion rate. So of the people that use search, how many of them actually buy? What percentage? And that will help you know how much revenue is being driven by search. And just showing that number, even if your site search is terrible, is an eye-opener for some people, because they realize, hey, there are some people actually buying things, and if we had a decent site search, maybe we'd have a lot more people buying things. The other thing that you want to focus on is survey metrics. So one of the problems with search is that without having a survey, you don't know whether people actually found what they're looking for. You might know they landed on a page, but you don't know if they got the answer to their question. And so it's very important to ask the right question. So don't ask a question of how satisfied are you with our search engine. Instead, ask them, for this search, did you find what you're looking for right now? Was this what you wanted? Because that's what you really want to understand. There are other kinds of metrics that are easier to collect. You don't have to do all that work of figuring out your revenue. You don't have to put a survey together. All you can do is use the search engine. Almost every search engine can tell you these three numbers. It can tell you how many people searched for something and got no results. It can tell you how many people searched for something but then didn't click on any of the results. And then it can tell you how many people searched on something and didn't buy anything. Now, you can be pretty sure that if somebody got no results or they didn't click, that that was a failed search. That search didn't work. And so if you can do things that will then fix the fact that those searches aren't working, that's going to be something where you immediately know you're improving. Because those people getting no results and doing no clicks, you know that they're not buying anything because they didn't find what they were looking for. If they can't find it, they can't buy it. And so what you want to focus on is how can you now lower the number of no result searches and the number of no click searches, and eventually the number of no conversion searches as well. So there's two ways of doing that kind of improvement. The first way is top-down, and I call that the top 40 approach. And the other way is the long tail approach, which is kind of bottoms up. So the first way focuses on the most popular searches. So it focuses on the very highest volume searches, the search keywords that the most people are typing in every month. And the other techniques focus on trying to improve all searches. And so you can imagine that both of these things are important. Those most popular searches are probably the ones that would drive the most revenue if you could just get your arms around making those search results good. But on the other hand, those are probably not a really high percentage of the searches because people type in so many different things. And so you have to do other things that aren't focused search keyword by search keyword. They're focused on the whole site search experience for every keyword. So let's look at that popular approach first, the top 40 approach. So one of the things that's true is most search terms are unique. In any site, if you take a look at the end of the month and say, what is the number of searches that occur on the site, you'll see that there are, in some of them, thousands and thousands of unique searches. And a lot of them, in fact, when I worked at IBM, I worked on the site search engine there. And one of the things that we found was that half of the search queries that came in every month, the keywords, were only used one time. So one time somebody typed this in. So 50%, if you looked at the list of keywords, were only used one time. And then if you looked at the 1,000 most popular queries, at the time that I worked on this, it accounted for only 27% of the volume. So even if you had the time to work on 1,000 different keywords and fixing the content and making those things happen, which is what we're going to talk about next, then you still have only affected 27% of the search volume. So obviously you can't stop by just doing this top 40 approach or top 1,000 approach in this case. You have to focus on doing something that works for the rest of the queries as well. But let's focus on the top-down approach now. So the first thing you need to do, so let's say you start by saying, let's just look at the top 10, right? Make it simple. Or top 2. Say this is the most popular keyword on our site. This is how many we got last month. The first thing you have to know is what is the right answer. So what would be the right page to bring up for that search result? And there's lots of different ways you can figure that out. You can use a survey to find out. You can see what kind of answers were put on message boards. You can take a vote. Usually you would actually know what the answer is. The other thing that you want to do is once you've got that answer, then you want to think about the fact that there are many, many different words that people might type in that all should go to that same answer. So this is an example for Microsoft. So if someone types in system crash, Windows failure, blue screen of death, BSOD, the acronym for blue screen of death, they should get the same answer each time, right? Because all of those things are just different words meaning the same thing. So the first thing you want to do is see what are those popular ones, what is the right answer, and then figure out what are the other words that people could be typing in that should get that same answer. And then you follow the same process for every keyword. So you want to choose that landing page, whatever the right answer is for each one. Then what you want to do is you want to analyze those metrics we talked about, the no results ones, the no click ones. And then you change the landing page, and you keep changing it until that page starts to come up and until you start to see people converting. Now, if you can't figure out how to get that page to come up in the search engine, then what you want to do is you want to hard code it. So you can't do this with Google for website search, but for site search you can. For site search, you can actually plug your answer in for that particular search and get the right answer there. Now, you have to maintain this over time. You have to make sure that you're constantly looking at what the popular ones in and plugging the right answer in. But if all else fails, if you can't figure out how to change the titles on the page, how to improve the content, how to tune the search engine so the right pages are coming up, if you can't do any of those things, then what you have to do is just plug it in for the most popular ones. Another thing you have to focus on is having a single search index, and this starts to get into that long tail approach. So for the long tail approach, this can affect all the keywords, not just the top 40 ones. So if you have multiple places on your site that each have different search engines, that makes it really hard for people because they don't usually know where on the site they should be to do a search. And so the relevance ranking will work the best with a single search engine. And so you can, even if you've got multiple search engines now, one of the things to do is get rid of them, go to a single search engine across your whole site. The other thing you do is you can work on the user interface. So you can do things like multifaceted search. So here's an example where you can see on the left of these search results, you can click on things and be much more specific. So even if people don't know all the search words that they should type in, what they can do is they can start clicking on different facets on the left, facet values, so that they can then drill down and make sure they're only getting the ones they're looking for. And the cool thing about multifaceted search that makes it a lot easier than the typical advanced search stuff you see is that you can't get a not found. Each time you click, it'll only show things that really exist. You can also tune your search engine. You can focus on things like whether it has the right defaults. Do you default to anding all the words, or should you maybe default to oring the words, because that'll reduce your not found? If you have a multinational website, do you focus when people are on the Italy country site, do you only show Italian results from Italy, or do you show global results? Have you looked at the ranking algorithm? Most search engines let you tune it, so you can say which things are more or less important in that ranking algorithm. And you can also look at those names of the facets we saw to make sure that people understand what they're getting when they click those things. You want to make sure that your search box is on every page, and you want to make sure it has the word search in it. An upper right-hand corner is a good place to put a search box, and you want to make it big so that if people typically type in longer search queries, that they have some room to do that. So this was a real quick tour through site search. If you're interested in more information on site search, my first book, Search Engine Marketing, Inc., actually has an entire chapter devoted to site search. But I'm sure there are lots of questions that people have that I didn't answer today. One of the things, you still have a minute to put in some questions that Frank can read to me. But one thing I'd just like to highlight is we have a sponsor for next month's webinar. American Banker and American Banker Magazine are sponsoring organizational social media for financial services. Now, I'll give you a clue. Even if you're not in financial services, you're going to learn a lot about how to use social media in your organization. But if you're in financial services, you know somebody in financial services, this would be a great webinar to clue them into. So Frank, let me know what kinds of questions we've got. I'm looking forward to answering them.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm sure our attendees have a much stronger idea of how to optimize their website search. But as you have guessed already, that you didn't answer every question. Every week this happens, or every month this happens. Come on, Mike.
I'll work on it.
I've got a lot of good questions from the audience, and they're teed up for you. I would like to remind our audience that it's not too late to ask a question by typing into the questions box in your GoToWebinar controls. And the first question I have is relative to site size. Is there a let's see how to say this properly? If you have a smaller site and you're going to have a smaller sample set, can you still do some of these things that you do on these larger sites with regard to the site search?
You can. Having a smaller site, you might initially say to yourself, well, that makes it much easier. In some ways, it does make it easier because there are fewer different search keywords to look at, and there's fewer things for you to worry about. But in some ways, it makes it harder because usually with smaller sites, you have even fewer resources to go work on this. And so it's really important that you work on the most popular ones. And it might be harder for you to spend the time to figure out all the other queries. It's also, in a small site, it's usually easier to fix your navigation if the navigation is a problem. It's usually easier to add more content if you see that there's missing content that people are searching for and they can't find. But I would say that it doesn't seem to make much difference whether you have a small site or a large site. They both seem to have the same problem. They both will have lots of people coming that don't find what they're looking for. You will find lots of gaps in your content. You will find that your navigation needs to be improved. All the kinds of things we talked about affect both small sites and large sites.
Okay, and we've got one other question I'd like to get before we run out of time, because once again, we like to respect folks' time with our 30-minute rule. But a good question from one of our attendees. Is there other, when you get this information, basically what they're asking is, when you get this information from your site for site search, is there other places you can apply this information? I mean, does this help build out others, like maybe search marketing efforts? You know, what can you glean from these site search information? Excuse me.
It's a great question. When you look at what people are typing in to your site search, those might be excellent variations for keywords that you want to go after in search engine optimization and in paid search. So if someone comes to your site and they're typing something in, one of the ways to look at this is it's free market research. Everything they're typing into your site is something that they think you have the answer for. So you might find that people are typing in lots of things that you don't sell. And you can ask yourself, well, gee, it seems like people would buy that from us if we did sell it because they're coming here and typing it in. I wonder if we should add that kind of product. Or they're telling you what kind of language they use. And you might be not having any pages that describe that, and then you might want to put that in. They might be trying to solve a problem with one of your products that you don't have any page for, because you didn't realize that people could actually solve your problem using your product. And so there's lots of different ways that you can take that free market research and figure it out to do. You can apply it to your search engine campaigns. You can apply it to product development. You can apply it to your marketing message, which people are telling you is this is what's on their minds. And it's unfiltered. It's an unprompted. Nobody has asked them a question. Nobody has framed anything except to say, here's the website you're on. And so whatever you get in that search box is what they think that website is about. And so you can learn a lot about where your brand positioning is, where your product positioning is from just looking at what people type in. And you can use that in your marketing and your product development.
All right, well, great. Well, that's excuse me. That's all the time that we have for today. And thanks to Mike for the great ideas, and thanks especially to our audience for your participation and your questions. That's what makes this thing go. So if any of you had questions that we did not answer or did not have time to answer, you can email your question to Eileen. That's EILEEN at MikeMoranGroup.com. And Eileen, be sure to get those questions to Mike for an answer. Later this week, we'll send you all a link to the recording of this webinar to listen to again and to share with others, and we'd appreciate you passing it around. And also, as Mike had mentioned, to talk up our next webinar, which will be next month. It's called Organizational Social Media for Financial Services, How to Start from Within. It's scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S., and it's on November 15th. And our sponsor will be American Banker, but this information will be good for anybody who's curious and wants to learn more about social media within their organization. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month for our next webinar. Take care.